Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Science of Superpowers. So glad that you're joining us again. And we have a delightful guest for you today. We have Dom Brightmon with us today. Dom, you want to say hi to everybody?
How's it going, my friends? It's great to be here and show off some magical superpowers.
I love it. Magical indeed. We're going to talk about the secret to fulfillment today. And those words were chosen really, really specifically because, of course, it's not a secret, right? It's available to everybody, but it's a secret in the sense that a lot of times it feels out of reach for people and out of our own paradigms and our constructs. So it can feel very secretive. But ultimately, it's available to everybody. And so we're going to talk about that today. And the idea of fulfillment, what does that really mean? Right? We are very multifaceted, multidimensional beings, and we have different levels and different needs and different wants and desires inside of us. And how do we create a life and a way of being that stands a chance of addressing all of that, right? And kind of we get off that push and pull yo-yo, but rather create an existence where we can say, hey, I want all of these things, even when they seem to contradict each other, right? Like I want to be alone and I want to be with friends. Like, how do you kind of have that? And we all have that experience, right? Like, I want to go see that movie, but I really just want to curl up on the couch with a good book. What do you do, right? How do you manage all of those internal contradictions? That's at the heart of the foundation building for fulfillment, right? So that you can feel confident and comfortable and you know that all of those pieces and parts are being addressed and that you're living into your full existence. And so Dom is an author, he's an inspirer, an influencer in his own right, helping people advance by helping others advance, right? And understanding that there is this interconnection amongst all of us. You all hear about that, whether we look at it through religion, spirituality, individual growth, or philosophy and psychology. It's that aspect that acknowledges, like, I am you, you are me, and we have shared impacts here. And so, how do we bring all of that into this bigger conversation of fulfillment and recognize that we're not operating in a vacuum? So it's a whole lot of variables, and each of us puts our own little puzzle together in different ways. And so we're going to hear a little bit about how Dom does that and talk about his perspective on fulfillment. But first, we're going to start in by saying, or by asking, what are your superpowers and how are you using them for good?
Thanks a bunch, Tonya. And thanks a bunch for having me on your fabulous podcast indeed. Because, hey, the name of the game is we all got superpowers, at least one of them. Some call them gifts, some call them a talent. But, hey, superpowers are where it's at. Because the thing is, if you could change one life, that one life may change 10,000, if not a million other people. And I have to say, if I was to really dive deep into the one word that would probably personify my superpowers would be connectivity because the thing is I grew up in a Baptist church and basically my dad was a big influence on that where basically Sunday from like 8 to 3 o'clock I basically be in the church occasionally during the week for Bible study, then go to school and then play with my friends and all that good stuff. And then in college got more curious about other religions. And during that time growing up, I also worked at the library part time and eventually got promoted there full time and spent over 15 years at a public library. And when you're at a public library where it's not just about books and card catalogs that folks may think, it's a community center where you're helping out people, especially in a community where I was, where we have a lot of digital divide going on, where especially years ago when the Kindle Fire first came out, or they got iPads and needed help with really knowing how to use. Like, hey, my
Mhm.
kid or my grandkid got me this new shiny piece of fangled technology so I can read 10,000 books, but how the heck do I even turn it on? So it's like introducing folks or reintroducing folks to the and getting them confident with technology and the fact that books are here because people are here and it's all about books and people. So whether it's connecting ideas together for dynamic living, connecting people with one another, or heck, even finding almost anything and turning it into a pun, it's really all about connectivity. So connecting people, connecting books, connecting them both together, and together really making a bigger, brighter community. So that's really what I'm all about because books and people is a name of the game for me. And when you think about it, it's kind of the reason why we are all here.
Mhm. That connection piece for sure. And so what inspired you to go sort of this rather non-traditional route in podcasting and books and helping others. And I know you mentioned that your dad was a big influence in that. So clearly you were brought up with this sort of service mindset, right? Because that's its own walk, to run a church and to be available to people in that capacity. But what else inspired you as you looked out? We get to build our lives in all kinds of funky ways, and there's all different ways to do it, right? Really, that's the gift of. You talked about technology. You talked about generational issues, and we're seeing, I think, particularly after the pandemic, that we don't really share realities, right? There's a million and one ways to create your reality, but we do share spaces. And so what it feels like to me is that you got real with what your reality was, but then also we're able to sort of look out and say this isn't everybody's reality. And then wanting to work in the space in between there where you sort of join people, right? And make those connections and help people see across those divides and even understand themselves better. What inspired you to do that in your own existence?
What inspired me to do that? Well, it was a big desire for change. It was back in the year of 2012 where folks, and especially in the US of A, thought the world was going to end, but all that really happened is that we lost Twinkies for a month near the end. Just like, yeah, the mind's got it right, y'all. Twinkies are no longer allowed for like a month or whatever. And what made that year what big one for me is that I had to eat a setback sandwich of my father going downhill where he went out for a drive and he got lost, and we found him 36 hours later, or should I say the police and some EMTs up found him later and diagnosed him with Alzheimer's. So
Mm.
having to take away his license, something that he loved to do, he loved to drive. He was a veteran of US Airborne, 82nd Airborne paratrooper, and when he got out of the military, he was a bus driver for over 35 years. So we just loved driving, and just taking that away because of his mental state. And then little did I know that in this one life we have to live, it's one life. It's not your personal and professional coin of life. It's still two sides of that one same coin. And got into a car accident a month and some change later, on my 21st birthday, when I was going to IT security class. And to complete the sandwich, where all of it came together, I was slacking off at work and having some miscommunication issues with my colleagues. And my boss at the time, she called me in and listed some things where I basically was not on the usual script of the usual comes in, does his work, keeps to himself for the most part, may crack a joke here and there since his personality came out after a few years being in with the company. And and she was like, "Hey, Dom, you're basically going to be a leader to some of these new staff members I'm hiring at the time, because if you're in a place for 5 years, they haven't fired you yet, you got to know something. You haven't done nothing too stupid to lose your job yet." So that word leader stuck in my subconscious mind, and went into the 650s of the nonfiction area and picked up one of John Maxwell's books, and became a voracious reader after that. Where if there's a book on leadership, sales, psychology, self help, occasionally biographies, maybe here a novel here and there, like The Alchemist, like I'll basically pick it up and just feed my mind and fall in love with reading again. Because the thing is, in grade school, especially towards the end of middle, going into high school, I was assigned books to read where I would basically fall asleep halfway reading them. And I just didn't like reading anymore. And then found it again and realized, oh, wait, these are great books to help me to develop and become the person I truly want to become. And that really all happened because I had a desire for a change. And there
Mhm.
may be someone listening right now who wants that desire for change. If you have that desire to change, let that be the catalyst for your growth by taking action in a positive direction, by at least doing something to change your life trajectory north.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, I love that. I remember when Justin and I met teaching at the Counter Intel School, we taught a class on critical thinking, but it really did involve like this idea of getting to know yourself. Because in a communication setting, if you don't really know who you are, your stereotyping, your biases, your what you're projecting out, right, what you're transmitting energetically, then you don't know how you're flavoring the conversation, and it does have an impact. And so in the course of that, I was like, get to know yourself, like read a fortune cookie, read your horoscope, do something that provides a little introspection find yourself in a book, right? And I think that's the difference between just reading the words on the page versus really connecting into it. And it's easier to connect in when we feel like we're doing that by choice. But I want to pause because I think you just casually threw out a Dewey Decimal number and just were like, oh yeah, in the 650s, the nonfiction 650s. I was like, what did he just? He did. He totally did. And my mind just went, and I was following the stacks and I knew exactly where you were. And I'm like, no, he did not. So I thought that was pretty cool. And it speaks to, I'm laughing about that. And the gist of what you're talking about here really does touch on this idea of fulfillment, because there's this, like I talked about at the beginning, we have all these pieces and parts, right? So you have the piece that's like, when the teacher says you should read this book, it's like, no, I should not, right? And it's like, but could you have gotten like the value out of it then? Of course. Like, could you have related to it and pulled stuff out of it? Of course. But there is sort of this switch that happens, I think, where we all get to choose whether or not to take responsibility for our lives. And we don't really have, most of our cultures and subcultures don't really have a sort of rite of passage or a coming of age or a real significant thing that occurs for us that says, hey, now you're responsible. Like, this is your life, right? And so we have these kind of phases of prolonged adolescence, and it's like, wait, when am I going to feel like an adult? I remember being married and having a kid, and I'm like, am I adult now? Like, I don't feel like I'm an adult. Like, what does that mean? Right? And really diving into this notion of it. And I think it happens in phases, right? Where we take more and more responsibility, we develop more and more sovereignty for our existence. And when you can do that, you get to know yourself in all of these nuanced ways, and you get to address your own needs and wants and desires as you learn to harmonize that with others, with a divine plan or a creative plan, or however you want to hold this sort of synchronicity that we all intersect with. And so I like that you speak of this notion of when you voluntarily went back to like the book, you were able to integrate it in a very different way. And how that lit you up in your desire to help others in that capacity. It's not an easy walk per se, because but it
Yeah.
seems to be a sort of natural progression of this development of the self. As we develop ourselves and get to know ourselves better and in deeper ways, there's this evolution that occurs where you start noticing like there's really no separation between us, right? What affects you affects me. How you show up in my existence is partly how I expect you to show up and what I'm willing to receive from you, and how those energetic dynamics work. And that can impinge on our fulfillment, or how fulfilled we feel about our existence. And so to step into that space and say, hey, I think I can help others with this. I want to have conversations on a podcast show, or I want to write books about what I'm learning here, and in putting all of those various layers together. And so let's fast forward a little bit, Dom, and what's the future hold for you? Like, when you dream out to the big vision and the big picture, what do you see for yourself in that?
What I see for myself in the future, definitely space classes, just random space art on my freaking lens. Just be like, yeah, I'm in the galaxy now. Just call me the guardian of the galaxy. That's right. I was that's not
I'm thinking
part
you're in
of
the galaxy now as it is. Like, I'm already
it.
seeing you out there. It's like, Dom, where are you calling in
That's right, indeed. Calling from Pluto. Pluto's still mad at
from?
the folks on Earth. It's like, I'm a planet, darn it. Stop neglecting me. But nah, seriously, the future, though. Definitely full-time entrepreneurship is one of the main goals, because I still have the day job at a local library, and coming to the close of that, I feel like I probably got another year of that left in me, because I've had it since I was in second half of high school and advanced in the company when I went through college and things like that. But it's like, hey, it's time to do something bigger, and I'm grateful for the lessons that I've acquired from there. And I definitely more books in the future, and eventually want to interview 1,000 authors across the globe for my podcast Going North, because for some strange reason that ability to just to connect with people, especially with fellow writers who just need publicity and opportunities to get their message and their work out there, is the fact that, hey, you know what? There's a lot of wonderful stories out there that need sharing. And it's like, okay, what's a big goal that I can stretch myself towards? And it's like, oh, let me interview 1,000 authors because I'm basically in this flow where I'm 750 plus in so far, and it started 6 years ago. It just has a way to market my own books myself. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I could just use this as a marketing tool. But the thing is, when you take action a certain direction, when you start to move, like a lot of wonderful just opportunities to really help you on your path will appear. And it started off 6 years ago in 2017 after my dad passed in March of that year when I forgot about, well, I didn't forget, I just stopped marketing, and I was going through some grief that I didn't even know I was still dealing with. And the
Mhm.
thing is that now it's crazy looking back where it's like most folks don't even get close to that number. And it's like this many folks have gotten their stories out there, and I've learned a lot in the process. And I'm still learning too, which is the beautiful thing because there's always something new to learn
Mhm.
because there's so many inspirational folks out there that you may not always hear from. And I love that you do this here too on your wonderful podcast because there's some folks out there who may not have a play on the title. They don't have like Marvel or DC level publicity, and they need to get their stories out there and be like,
Yeah.
"Hey, we got another hero out here. It's bigger than Batman and Superman, y'all, and Wonder Woman. There's probably a phenomenal woman out there or a phenomenal man out there who
Mhm.
has a story to share about how they've discovered their superpower, their why, their fulfillment, where they're fully full, just filling out their purpose. So yeah, that's really what's in the future for me. Getting to that 1,000 episode mark for the show, more books, full time entrepreneurship, and definitely helping out more folks in the process.
Beautiful and beautiful vision. And I can absolutely second the power of just coming into this space with somebody else. It's there's a connection here. You know, we've been at it since just right before you, about 2016 was when the network started with my first show. And I think over the years we're over almost 2,000 episodes at this point for the network as a whole. And it's amazing how it builds you, right? Which I didn't you can't anticipate all of the ancillary benefits to doing this kind of thing, but it starts to touch into aspects of you that you didn't know you had, right? And so you're talking to people who represent pieces of you that have been stagnant or been hidden, right? And you're like, oh wait, I resonate with that. That sparks that for me. And our willingness to come together with those who we normally may not have any interaction with. I think podcasting allows for that if you stretch yourself, right? It's easy to kind of get into your comfort and just want to talk to these people, right? But in our world, we encouraged our hosts to talk to folks who are doing the exact same thing they're doing, right? To like their competitors, if you will, because there's value in speaking to people who are doing similar work. It starts to bring us back into that collaboration. It starts to remind us that we have these intersections, and there's far more that connects us together than that tears us apart. But it requires us being willing to sit and be with each other, and podcasting allows for some really valuable conversations if we're willing to sort of put those walls down and just be real with each other for a moment, and then that gets shared out. You know, podcasting is such a beautiful mechanism for sharing, for educating, for touching into people's lives. And so it's fascinating. I'm really curious to see where podcasting will go in the future. But I know that we proved with our network that the collaboration effect of podcasting is incredibly valuable. It outperforms everything else if you understand the nature of it, which is truly much like your books, right? This concept that all ships rise, right? You help yourself best by helping others, right? And advancing others to advance yourself in your book. And so remembering that, I think when we talk with each other and have real conversations and say, hey, tell me about you. Tell me about your life and taking that moment. And so I love that you've had similar experience with podcasting, and I'm not surprised to find out that you're creating into a space where you can help talk to others about how to do the same in their world through podcasting. We can tease your next quarter project for you a little bit, as you take what you've learned here and share it with others. Which, going back to our topic today of fulfillment, I do believe that's part of our human makeup is we want to know that we've had some influence, or that we've contributed, or that we've taught something. It seems to be sort of a natural progression of our own evolution and maturation processes. And so, looking ahead, Dom, as you kind of reflect back on where you've been and what you've been through, and it's been a lot, right? As you put this together, especially following your dad's passing, of how do you build your existence from that place? And something interesting happens to us when we lose a parent, in that capacity. It sort of forces this maturation level that you don't really know about, I think, until you see it and live through it. And then how do you, as you look forward to helping others in that capacity, you're looking at the books and the podcasting and stuff. But what is your favorite way of really working with people, of being in their space, or of providing kind of these lessons that you've learned? Is it the books? Is it the podcasting? Is it another service that you provide? But what's your favorite way of working with people?
I have to say, sometimes it's really through coaching in a way, and heck, even like with the podcast itself, sometimes it can even feel like an informal coaching session at times where like some folks will feel like, oh, I'm one and done. I write another book. Or it's like, oh, I wasn't even thinking of doing another project to honor a family member, and just digging and bringing out
Mhm.
new stuff within people. Because heck, even I'm pretty sure you've heard the whole seven why concept where you ask someone why seven times, and then eventually, usually the seventh time you ask them why, they get down to that nitty gritty, the root cause of their issue. It's like, oh, it was something with my parent where we had some disagreements. Oh, this is what my father used to do or my mother used to do. Or like
Mhm.
even a sad moment where they may have been sexually abused by a relative, which apparently is known to a lot of people. That I've also one of the many things I've learned from doing this podcast is like, yeah, it's a good world, but it's a big bad world too. So it's like, oh, there's a lot of stuff you can discover.
Mhm.
And just really just getting to that aspect, and then just seeing like the light bulbs just come out like, oh, I never thought of it that way. Heck, even on occasion, just joking with people where it's like, hey, happy Camel Appreciation Day on a Wednesday, where they're like, what the heck? We actually have to appreciate a camel today. That's today. It's like, oh, yeah, every hump day. And they're like, oh, yeah, hump day. Okay, buddy.
That brings up a great point though, through humor, right? Reminding people to laugh. To not take it like you said, there are some bad things that happen, right? And it all sort of leads into this development and maturation, this evolution that we all get to work through. And a lot of it is being able to find humor in the simple things, being able to kind of take a step back and go, okay, am I still breathing? Like, am I still here? And sometimes that's all you can do, right? We're talking about fulfillment, and that's a lifetime or lifetime's journey, folks. Like let's be a little gentle with ourselves. If you haven't reached the space where you're like, ah, la, I'm fulfilled, got it. Like, I don't know anyone really who has. It's a constant ongoing thing where we get to face everything that comes up for us, and being able to take those moments where you can make people laugh, right? Even if they're laughing at you and your silly joke, but it's the ability to say, and still there's this, right? No matter what's going on, we still have those moments too. Um, and I think that that's part of developing a lifestyle of fulfillment, is giving yourself grace and the space to be in whatever it is that you're being in, and to know that there's another perspective, always many other perspectives. So I love that, and I love that you connect with people in those spaces. Folks, if you want to check out what Dom's been up to, get over to dombrightmon.com. We'll have a link for that on our episode page, but that's DOMBRIGHTMON.com. You can check out his books and stay tuned there for his latest book in 2024. And follow the podcast and everything else. Is there anywhere else you want us to send them, Dom?
You know what? You said everything. Where that's the one location, dombrightmon.com. That's Dom Central right there. I got social media and whatnot, but hey, if you get on the website, it's all there.
It's all there. It's all there, right? It's all good, right? And so I'm excited, Dom, to see what happens for you as you transition, you know, in the next few years from where you are to where you're going. And appreciate that you're there exploring your world and sharing it with others and being willing to connect in with people in a podcast environment like this, to share stories, right? To talk about the things that are real to us, the things that matter. I think that matters, and it's nice to have comrades in arms over there and doing what you do. So thank you for the work you do in the world.
Oh, thank you, Tanya. That's right indeed. I love what you said there about
Fabulous.
giving yourself grace too, because you're gonna need that in fulfillment. Just because you're fulfilled doesn't mean you're gonna be fulfilled permanently. There's going to be some setbacks that are going to test you. So
That's right.
give
And
yourself
part of
grace.
establishing a life of fulfillment is knowing when to give yourself grace when you're not fulfilled, right? I mean, that's kind of the name of the game, is what's possible, what are our expectations, and how do we go about aligning those. Dom, do you want to offer any final words or inspiration before we leave for today?
Oh, sure thing. Well, the squiggly lines are coming, my friends. The squiggly lines are coming. And you're probably like, Dom, what the heck does that even mean?
I'm tracking. I
Yeah.
like it. I'm like, dude, the
Yeah.
swirl's not ending, folks. This is not changing. Get comfortable being uncomfortable. But continue, please continue.
Yeah. It was actually this funny picture I saw years ago where it had two images of success. It's like what folks think success is, a straight line forward. But what it really is you start off straight, but you get a bunch of squiggles and then you eventually reach success. So the squiggly lines are coming. And for some folks, they may already be here, but don't fret when you're in the squiggles. You can always get towards the end. And you'll have more fun stories to tell afterwards. So I say look forward. The squiggles are coming and looking forward to the stories. So look forward to the stories. That's probably one thing to keep in mind, or two things to keep in mind, maybe even multiples. Like, hey, this too shall pass, and this is going to make a great story for someone to hear later.
Absolutely right. And when in doubt, just say the word squiggle like a couple times and you'll get it. You're like, I'm listening to you say it. I'm like, oh, that's a fun word, squiggle, squiggle. You can't really say it or hear it without going, okay, you know, it kind of pulls you out of it. It's even better than wiggle. So we'll just remember squiggle. That's the word to think about. I think that's my favorite thing of today, Dom, was listening to you say the word squiggle. That's awesome. So folks, yeah, brace yourself, be ready for the squiggles and enjoy the ride. Right. When you learn to ride those waves and just are like, yep, I'm a human and it's messy and I mess up and sometimes I fall, but I pick myself back up again. And gosh, I'm learning a lot and having a good time along the way, you know, and that's, I think that there's value in cutting it back to that place and just saying, okay, what do we really want, right? What really matters to us when it's all cut away? What really matters? And it's these moments, right? The moments of connection, the moments of just touching in with people, the moment when a supervisor says, by the way, like, you're going to be leading people. How do you want to be leading people? Right? I remember that moment when I had that realization shortly after our daughter was born, and it's like, who do I want to be for her? Really, like 24/7, I have this little mini me watching everything that I do, absorbing everything. I was like, wow, you know, and it's a beautiful opportunity, whether you have children around you or not, just people. It's a beautiful opportunity to remember there's always somebody watching. Like, if you want the world to be a particular way, then you have to start with being that way because others are watching for how to be. And when all we have to go to is social media and mass media, you know, we don't have always the best examples there. So be that person, right? Be that alternate example of something if that's the world that you want to create into. You can't just keep doing the same old thing and expect the world to change around you. It's not going to work that way. um And so by so when in doubt, just take a pause and say squiggle a few times and you'll get there. Fabulous, Dom. I really appreciate you coming on the show today. Like I said, I appreciate everything that you're doing. Keep up the good work and know that you've got fans over here at the network, and we'll be watching your budding career and in flourishments as they go, and come back anytime.
Woo! Thanks again for the invitation.
You're so welcome. All right, everyone out there, thank you for listening. Where we wouldn't be possible if we didn't have your fanship and your listening. So we appreciate that. And until next time, remember who you are, and remember that we love you and love each other. Goodbye for now.